Let's be honest. When Meghan Markle first entered the royal spotlight, she won over the British public almost instantly. A glamorous Hollywood actress marrying the cheeky, much-loved Prince Harry was the perfect tabloid story. Their wedding felt like something out of a fairy tale. Cheering crowds, glowing press coverage, and an overwhelming sense that the monarchy was stepping into a new, modern era. It felt bold, refreshing, and even inspiring. But just a few years later, Meghan's image has dramatically shifted. And contrary to her and her supporters' claims, this change wasn't simply about racism or elitism. The real turning point came when the public began noticing a recurring theme: entitlement. The same woman who married into one of the world's most privileged families began casting herself as a victim of that very institution. The infamous Oprah interview cemented this new narrative. Far from a groundbreaking exposé, it was instead a carefully staged rebranding exercise. Meghan transitioning from dazzling duchess to wronged outsider. It was a masterclass in portraying victimhood. And then there's Oprah. Once celebrated as the face of empowerment, she built her legacy on the belief that anyone, no matter how marginalized or broken, could rise above adversity and achieve greatness. Her message was always about responsibility, resilience, and becoming a victor rather than a victim. Yet more recently, Oprah seems to have shifted direction. Instead of urging her guests to grow stronger, she now appears to amplify stories crafted to spark outrage and sympathy. That Meghan interview wasn't journalism, it was theater. Tightly controlled, perfectly timed, and steeped in calculated self-pity. Enter Charlie Kirk. Whatever one thinks of him, he identified the issue early on. While others hesitated to address the uncomfortable topics, he called it directly. Meghan wasn't pushed away. She chose to leave. And she didn't leave empty-handed. With millions secured and a Netflix deal in hand, she stepped out on her own terms. Kirk argued that what the public rejected wasn't Meghan's identity, it was her attitude. The manipulation of the press, the dismissal of royal protocol, the disregard for tradition, and the superiority masked as social justice, all of it eventually wore thin. People saw through it and they weren't impressed, and here's the key point. You don't need to be a monarchist to recognize this. This isn't about protecting the crown. It's about calling out a performance. Meghan's story isn't one of oppression, it's one of reinvention, marketed as victimhood. Meghan's public image shifted the moment she realized she couldn't control the narrative inside palace walls. So, she left, sought out cameras willing to play along, and reinvented herself as a victim of the very institution that once welcomed her. But the story doesn't end there. It gets even more concerning. After openly criticizing the royal family on global television, Meghan and Harry are now being subtly reintroduced into the fold. Their faces remain on the royal family's official website. They've reappeared at public events, and the palace PR machine is quietly smoothing the path for their return. Why? That's the real question. If you think this is simply about family reconciliation, you're missing the bigger picture. There's a larger agenda at play. One that rewards individuals like Meghan for weaponizing identity, undermining tradition, and turning personal decisions into political theater. While Charlie Kirk was attacked for stating what many were thinking, Meghan was profiting, recasting herself as the oppressed duchess on the world stage. And yet we're still being asked to view her as some misunderstood heroine. What unsettles people most isn't just Meghan's performance, it's how quickly powerful figures and institutions rallied behind her. Mainstream media didn't push back. They didn't ask for proof. They didn't demand clarity. Instead, they nodded along. Oprah handed her the stage. Netflix offered her a global platform. And the press repeated the same tired narrative. Meghan Markle was driven out by racism. No details. No evidence. Just a vague accusation strong enough to ignite a cultural firestorm. And once the outrage caught, anyone who questioned it, like Charlie Kirk, was painted as dangerous. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Meghan played the role with precision. She knew exactly when to deploy the race angle, when to tear up, and when to pause for dramatic effect. That moment in the Oprah interview, when she suggested a royal family member questioned how dark her baby's skin might be, was the spark. No names, no context. Just a loaded allegation dropped without challenge. And it worked. Headlines dominated. Social media exploded. The palace scrambled into defense mode. Mission accomplished. The real issue isn't just Meghan's manipulation, it's that the system enabled it. No real pushback, no probing questions, no prominent voices willing to say, hold on, This doesn't add up. That's where Charlie Kirk stood apart. Whether you agree with him or not, he didn't mince words. He called it exactly as he saw it. Charlie Kirk didn't sugarcoat it. He said what others wouldn't. Meghan Markle wasn't a victim, she was a strategist. She used her royal connection and identity politics as a powerful mix to secure fame, sympathy, and a fortune. And when Kirk called it out, the response wasn't reasoned debate or measured disagreement. It was outrage. Because people don't crave truth. They crave comforting narratives. Meghan delivered one, a glamorous woman of color silenced by an outdated monarchy. It was the perfect story, easy to digest, emotionally charged, and tailor-made to make people feel righteous in their anger. A villain to despise, a heroine to celebrate. But it was fiction, and for all his flaws, Kirk refused to play along. Then there's Harry. Once the beloved fun royal, admired for his irreverence and authenticity, he now appears as nothing more than a supporting character in Meghan's drama. He looks drained, diminished, a man who traded his independence for luxury living in California and the fleeting spotlight of podcast appearances. And yet, every time he returns to Britain, the palace rolls out the red carpet. They call it reconciliation, but let's be real. It looks more like damage control, a carefully managed PR reset. The irony is impossible to ignore. Harry and Meghan built their fortune by tearing into the monarchy. They accused it of racism, mocked its traditions, and smeared the legacy of the late Queen. Still, here they are being cautiously ushered back in, while William and Catherine quietly shoulder their duties with dignity. No interviews, no tantrums, no calculated headlines. Just service. That contrast tells us everything. Integrity doesn't trend. Quiet responsibility doesn't sell. What sells is spectacle, victimhood, drama, and carefully packaged emotional manipulation marketed as courage. Meghan's narrative is successful because it has all the right ingredients: a royal backdrop, racial tension, rebellion against tradition, and a ready-made villain in The Big Bad Monarchy. It's perfectly staged for Netflix, endorsed by Oprah, and amplified across social media. For the powerful figures working behind the scenes, it's simply too profitable to resist. Which brings us to the third player, Oprah. For decades, she embodied resilience, transformation, and accountability. Her interviews were once about redemption, growth, and hard truths. But now she has become another voice fueling grievance culture. In that infamous interview, Oprah didn't challenge Meghan, she elevated her. She didn't press for evidence, she handed her a megaphone. What should have been journalism became spectacle. And in doing so, Oprah shifted from being a symbol of empowerment to a figure reinforcing narratives designed to provoke outrage rather than inspire growth. Oprah never flinched. Not once. She sat calmly while the entire monarchy was branded as racist on national television, without a shred of proof. That wasn't journalism, it was an infomercial for victimhood. And that's what makes it dangerous. Oprah's platform still carries enormous influence. She could have pressed for evidence. She could have demanded clarity. Instead, she lobbed soft questions and left the stage wide open for one of the most destructive smear campaigns in modern royal history. And let's be clear, this wasn't just about airing grievances. It was a calculated move, rebuilding Meghan's image, tearing down the family she married into, and weaponizing public outrage. The irony? The very institution she torched is now slowly letting her and Harry back in. Harry's face remains on the official royal website. His charitable engagements are promoted as if nothing happened. He's framed not as a disgraced ex-royal, but as a figure of goodwill and service. Meanwhile, Meghan hovers in the background, far enough to dodge criticism, yet close enough to reap the benefits of royal association. So why is the palace allowing this? Why would King Charles, of all people, welcome back a couple who spent years dismantling the crown's credibility? The answer can only be weakness or strategy, and neither paints the monarchy in a flattering light. Because if this is playing nice to regain control of the narrative, it's already a lost cause. You don't invite back those who tried to burn down your house while the ashes are still smoldering. That's not diplomacy. That's surrender. And then there's the silence. The glaring, deliberate silence from voices that should be defending the monarchy. The media barely touches the subject now. The commentators who once stood up for the crown are muted. Even William and Catherine, the steady, stable figures who embody quiet duty, are being sidelined. Less coverage, fewer appearances, reduced visibility in official channels. Why? Because they're too normal. They don't create chaos. They don't throw tantrums. They don't fuel drama. They just serve. But in today's climate, service doesn't sell. Spectacle does. The worst part is how Meghan is now packaged, marketed as a revolutionary, when in truth she's an opportunist. Her persona is a patchwork of contradictions. She demands privacy while chasing the spotlight. She talks about justice while refusing scrutiny. She insists on respect while showing little in return. And yet, because drama trends and duty doesn't, her narrative keeps selling. Meghan refuses to show respect to the very institution that handed her a global stage in the first place. And yet, behind her stands a network of powerful backers, smart, influential people who keep this machine running. They craft the narrative, control the spotlight, and silence anyone who dares to question it. Charlie Kirk is proof of that. He spoke the quiet truth out loud, refusing to dress it up. He called out what so many others saw but lacked the courage to say. For that, he wasn't countered with reason. He was branded as hateful, dangerous, and wrong. But he wasn't wrong. He was simply inconvenient. And in today's culture, that's all it takes to be erased, daring to disrupt the approved storyline. That's the real tragedy here. This isn't just about Harry, Meghan, or even Oprah. It's about what happens when truth becomes secondary to narrative, and when being inconvenient is treated as a greater crime than being dishonest.